Arcane and The Last of Us have completely changed the game, pun intended, when it comes to TV adaptations of video games. Both have received immense praise for their writing, direction, animation, you name it. Hi, I'm Kyla, I have a BA in game design, and I'm here to actively hate on the TV adaptations of The Last of Us and Arcane. Alright, before you leave a bunch of hate comments and dislike the video to oblivion, please at least watch the rest of the video before you do so. No, I'm not critiquing the shows in terms of their place as TV, their adaptation quality, their meme quality, or their quality in general. But I am critiquing them as adaptations, mostly because why do we need them? Look, games have always been about one thing. The core game loop. Game loop is literally what makes the difference between a good and a bad game. Game loops are just basic actions that the player is going to be repeating over and over and over and over. In Minecraft, it's literally punch, collect, make new tool punch with, fight enemies, go deeper, punch, repeat. Minecraft doesn't necessarily have a plot, and it's still relevant even though it's been like 11 years. Oh god, I'm old. So you can have a game with a terrible story that's still playable because its mechanics are so fun, but you can't have a game with bad mechanics and a good story because that just makes it a movie or a TV show. Like, what's the point of it being a game if you're just telling a good story? I have seen so many games in the past few years where everyone kind of just shits on them because they're literally just movies that you like do a couple of quick time events in, or you just walk for hours and hours, and it's like, I could have gotten the same effect by watching someone walk for hours and hours, you know? The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2 might be primarily acclaimed for their story, but the gameplay loop of the games is what makes them the best games. You do not get Game of the Year if your gameplay loop looks like E.T. from Atari. You get dumped in a landfill and everyone forgets about you for like 80 years, and everyone forgets about you for like 40 years, and then they kind of like dig you up to be like, oh cool, old thing that we threw in a landfill a long time ago. So, going back to the topic at hand. These shows make for good TV, at least The Last of Us does. Let me finish. Arcane is actually the only show that I watched every episode of. It has beautiful animation, the characters were all really interesting in the beginning, and I was excited that something that was related to my favorite thing, video games, not League of Legends, was coming out and actually getting good reviews. But here's the thing. As someone who has never played League, I honestly had no idea what the fuck was going on. My basic knowledge was there was a war, these kids got scarred by it, they're stuck in poverty while these people are enjoying wealth. Basically the plot of every teen dystopia ever. What sucked me in was that I always wanted to know more about the world, more about what was going on, just more of the actual context of everything in general. Now, according to some of my friends that do play League, I definitely was missing a lot of this context simply by not having played this game. And while I'm sure they're planning to do another season, and that's why a lot of stuff in the first season had this big open ending, this is incredibly frustrating as someone who has never played League of Legends. Look, if you want to make a show based on a video game, you do have to expect that it's going to reach some people that have never even had a discussion about the basic lore of League of Legends, well, maybe a few that have never even heard of it. So you need to properly set up the setting for an unknowing viewer. Otherwise, the aforementioned viewer just spends most of the time trying to figure out what's actually going on instead of paying attention to the action taking place in the current scene. Now, when I watched Arcane, I was able to follow the plot, like the general plot of the show, fairly easily, but I was so much more interested in like the backstory of what was going on and like, why was there a war? Why did this war start in the first place? What was this war? Why does this hamster fuck like 200 years old? I don't understand why. Like, why is he the oldest one? He's literally like fucking, to me, this is just Hammond from Overwatch without his fucking ball, okay? Like, I need to know why he exists and like what his point is and why he's in this like big group of like council people and why they're the ones running the show, and like what about the like nation, city, I don't know, wherever like this chick comes from, and like her mom's a queen, I think. See, like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. All I know is that there are poor people that live like basically in the moat of the rich people, and the rich people live on like an island. That's like what I understand of it. Anyway, moving on. Now, League has lore to it, and it doesn't have to be in-your-face storytelling the way The Last of Us does storytelling. In a sense, The Last of Us show was like given a trust fund, while Arcane was like trying to get student loans and filling out that big-ass FAFSA form. The Last of Us is being given an extremely heavy praise for its adaptation accuracy, as well as the areas where it did stray away from the original plot of the story. And honestly, once Nick Offerman is in something, you really can't go wrong. I am a Parks and Recs fangirl, and he has my heart. But that's kind of the point. The Last of Us already did a good job of setting up the player for the world that they were entering, as well as the role that they would be playing in it. The Last of Us already had a good sense of what it was, an amazing story that was also written by a good group of designers who actually understood gameplay mechanics and how those mechanics could be used to make the story even better. And The Last of Us is honestly just a good enough story that when separated from the mechanics, it's still able to stand on its own as a well-written piece of media, because that's what it is at its core. Arcane hits a lot of points within its self-contained story that also accomplish this and account for a lot of its praise. The scenes are absolutely beautiful, and you grow attached to the characters as the plot progresses because it's so well written. But throwing your viewer into an environment without explaining anything doesn't work in visual media the way it can in a game. Even then, the game itself will likely give you more context clues in the environment as to why you are there than a film or TV show can. And yes, I strongly believe in the age-old show and don't tell rule of storytelling, but there is so much depth to the lore of League of Legends that I felt I was missing too much to fully understand the plot of Arcane. So do we really even need these TV shows? Well, yes and no. I find that one of the greatest praises being sung to The Last of Us is its adaptation accuracy, but at that point, why not just play the games? With Arcane, the setting and the main plot can be so lost in other League lore that you can't quite figure out what the true political issues of the area are. So here's my advice, as someone who loves video games and TV shows alike: do this. Okay, let me explain. The reason everyone is talking about this episode is because we get to see the beautiful journey of a background character from this deeply lost man into someone that has found a reason to survive outside of just surviving. Something I've loved about all media since I was a little kid was imagining all of the other stories that could be taking place in the world, which is why I read lots and lots of fan fiction and didn't have any friends in high school, but that's not the point. I always wanted to know more about side characters and what their lives were like when main characters were off getting shot at, and what was happening to the regular people that were there to progress a hero's journey rather than assist it. Could I grow to feel more sympathy for the villain than the hero? And fanfiction tended to serve a lot of those side character stories as opposed to just following the main plot and writing pornography. There were just like so many more options I could have by reading fanfiction, and it was something that really stuck with me as I got older, was just kind of imagining these ideas as to what could be happening to the side characters of a show or a game or a movie. And that's really why everyone likes this episode so much, is that they actually got to see a canonical telling of a side character's story. But when it comes to games without the extensively well-written plot of The Last of Us, TV or movies are the perfect opportunity to actually set up the lore of your game. Riot's other big game, Valorant, does have a good amount of lore behind it that I am continuously trying to keep up on and piece together through all of their little cryptic notes. While I love watching every new Agent trailer that comes out for this very reason, the lore isn't what keeps me playing Valorant. It's the joy and rage of the game loop. But if Riot decided to make a Valorant show in the Arcane animation style that gave me just like the plot of Valorant and more detailed character lore and why Legion Kingdom is so bad and what's with all the alternate reality shit, it would actually be a dream come true. Riot, if you're watching this, I would like to mention again that I have a BA in game design and I would love to write or do map design for you. Hit me up, don't be shy. And finally, something I think is completely ridiculous and I honestly don't know how to feel about it is that a lot of people who didn't play The Last of Us originally have decided to pick up the game and play it themselves now that the show has come out, and they've watched the show and they've become like so engrossed in the plot of the show, which kind of makes me mad because really, like, okay, so my family never played The Last of Us. Watched the TV show, now they're all gonna play The Last of Us. Why? You're literally just going to get the plot of the show with like maybe more stuff in between it. And that's cool, and it like will teach you more about like the world that the game is set in than the show probably would. But why wouldn't you just play the game in the first place? So I guess at the end of all of this, what are your thoughts? Should we nix game-based TV and movies altogether? Should they keep going in the direction of Arcane or the direction of The Last of Us? Or should we just move in a completely different direction? Honestly, that's what I vote for, because I think you could really dive in on some of these other games that don't necessarily have storytelling components like Valorant or even like League of Legends, and be able to like bring the lore side of the game to light while not having to change the entire way your FPS or your tactical based game is actually being played. If you're strongly opinionated like me, I'd really love to discuss it with you in the comments below after you click my subscribe button and like my video. As always, I'm Purple Sark, and I'm logging off. Bye.